So, Mr. Francis, it's well known that many brave men perished in the First World War. But whilst you were there, what exactly happened with all the bodies left in the trenches?
On the dead bodies, some of them had food which had been sent by relatives from England, and of course they carried it in the trenches, and that was a godsend to about 3 or 4 of us who was looking. And we felt no qualm at all at the fact we was robbing the dead, nothing at all. And as I've told you before, they treated the dead as nothing, like a piece of wood. It's got to be useful. That's just why they was put in the trenches where we got to stand, and we stood on them, because by doing so it made us dry. Of course, these bodies were recovered later, but if they left it too long, they found the body, but the head was a skeleton because the rats had chewed them. And to see a body with just no face but a skeleton would shock the most modest of men.
You really saw that?
Did I see it? I saw skeletons galore. If you left a body in a place where it was dangerous for 4 or 5 nights, the whole lot, the clothes is torn to pieces, and there's a perfect skeleton there, all the flesh the rats have ate. And there are many books showing that, war books, and official books that I've read. That was one of the most terrible things to see.
Excuse my forwardness, but did you ever have to personally bury them?
Yes, on Christmas morning above all, I was called out because I haven't told you, but Annie and I had volunteered for night experiences to go to the German trench and view their wire and how many men they had behind it. In other words, it was a dangerous quest, and because of that, we was saved for going over the top twice, and it was worth that. It was a dangerous job, but that was the reward.
Fascinating, although both sound like incredibly frightening tasks. Anyway, you were about to speak about Christmas Day.
Yes, I was called out with several others. There's a sergeant was gathering together, and I says, what's the job? And he says, you better have this first. And he gave me a stiff drink of the British rum. And honestly, once you had a drink of that, you'd take on the German army. And headquarters about a mile away had been hit by several shells and killed everyone. Not only killed everyone, about 20, but blown them to bits. And our light little job was to gather up the bits in a sack and take all the particulars that every soldier carries round his neck. It took about an hour or so, but that was our Christmas morning job.
Where does one find the strength to be able to do something like that?
Well, I'd been out some time, and my brother and I, for some reason, we'd grown what used to bullets and bombs, and we'd grown, especially my brother, he didn't care for 2 hoots for hundreds of Germans, and although I used my brother, he was the bravest man on that field. And together, I think we never felt afraid or anything as much as the other people did.
Why do you think that is? Why did other people panic, but not the both of you?
Well, in the first place, most of the exhibitions, the things we had to do, which the main people didn't do, we were on the list, top of the list. The Brothers Francis, anything dangerous, On one night, we proposed to take the sentry, the German sentry, and bring him back alive to our line. There was about 15 of us on that occasion. And we got near the wire as possible. We had to cut a little passage to get right, and we saw there was only a young fellow, German, who was walking up and down the German trench, and three of our strongest men leaped onto the trench, picked him up and literally thrown this little German, only about my own age, out. And of course we had to slap our hands over his face because he was screaming and screaming. But fortunately we brought with us a chap who did a little German, and he told him to be quiet, and he was lucky. The war for him was over, and we treated him very good, and he was quiet. But by this time the Germans had missed the century, and all hell broke loose because the exit for us across the trenches, some 200 yards, was absolutely pounded with bullets and bombs and shells. And we had to find, with the German prisoner, we had to find the deepest hole we could, and we stopped there for over an hour till all this firing stopped, and then it was safe to creep back to our own lines.
What were people more scared of, the bullets or the shells?
Either things kill you, so they was all the same. Bullets was slightly preferable because they was clean and not like shells which battered a lump out of you or give you fearful wounds. And of course the wounds were so bad that in those days, if a wound was bad, they didn't bother to try and they took the leg off.
Forgive my asking, but were any of your friends ever wounded?
The closest friend ever, next to my brother. We three always went together. And he was about 6 or 7 yards in front of us on we was made to take a village which was about 200 or 300 yards ahead. And of course it was a very hot time, bullets and bombs and shells everywhere. And this friend of ours got a very bad wound in the leg, and his screams, honestly, sometimes at night I can still hear them. Absolutely scream. His leg was nearly off. He got a terrible wound there, because he couldn't stand, and he kept screaming and screaming and screaming till that got slower and slower and quieter, and of course in the space of about 20 minutes he was dead. But there was a case that although he pleaded with us and my brother to come and help him, we couldn't do it. We should get ourselves into severe trouble. As I've told you before, we got to stop that, and we had to walk past him. And the terrible thing is that he was one that stopped there 2 days, because where the position was very dangerous for the Red Cross man to approach him. They get killed themselves, so they had to leave him a couple of days. And that couple of days, there was a skeleton on his head. The rats had chewed him. And the more bodies there was, the more hundreds of rats we had. You can understand that. Bloated, as big as rabbits. That's the reason. Bodies was lying out in the field all over the trenches and in the open. And you see, it was too dangerous for the Red Cross men to oppose. And believing that they was dead, which they were, there was no hurry to go and get them in.
That concludes our interview with Mr. Ted Francis. From listening to his accounts of the First World War, we are able to hear of the horrors that many young men at the time were forced to endure. 880,000 Britons lost their lives in the conflict, and around 10 million lost their lives in all. Ted Francis sadly passed away in 1996, and we here at History Dive offer both our respect and condolences to the family of this open book of a man. Please remember to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe for more history dives.